Hello to the pessimistic, optimistic, and everyone in between. My name is Connor Philippi, and welcome back to the Minnesotan Sports Podcast. So this episode is going to be kind of a breakdown of everything that's happened in the NFL so far as teams that have done better or worse than we expected at the beginning of the season, just kind of breaking down every team and going over how it's looked for them so far. We're also going to be going over my predictions so far and how well I've done, and we'll start off with that. But before I start off with anything, I just want to one more time say I really appreciate everyone watching these videos. Obviously, whenever you start something like this, it's a very slow incline. So I appreciate everyone that comes to watch. And something that's very helpful for me is if you would subscribe if you do regularly listen. I wouldn't expect anyone who doesn't regularly listen to subscribe for me just for whatever reason, but if you do watch me a lot, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe. And also just remember, if you don't want to watch the video, I do also have a podcast that is available on the host platform Anchor as well as on Spotify. So if you search up my same name on Spotify, it should also come up, and you can listen to me while you're driving. If there's some other time where you'd rather just listen than watch, I understand sometimes YouTube takes forever to load if you're in bad internet or whatever you want to do. If you want to download it, just keep that in mind. That's also available. And also if you want to follow my social medias, that's also available too, and I'll put that in my description. But just thanks again to everyone that watches, and I hope everyone can continue to support me. So going into this video, we'll start off here with kind of going over my record so far. So now going into, as we finish week 9, halfway through the season, I have gotten 44 of my picks right, and I've gotten 27 of my picks wrong, and then there was that one weird tie. I think that was that week 1 of the season, or was it week 2? I can't remember. But I'll take that, considering the first 3 or 4 weeks are always such a big jumble of guesses of how good the teams are going to be. So I'll take a 44, 27, and 1 record. And I've done 3, and I'll also keep in mind that is not the full games that have been played, because I did take a good 3-week hiatus from doing videos. I just did the raw reactions those weeks, and I didn't even get into these predictions at all those few weeks, and I apologize for that. But that's why it's not going to be the halfway point to the end is going to be more predictions than what I've done so far, because I just missed those few weeks. But I'll take that. And then also I started doing the upset of the week after week 7. So I've done 3 of those so far, and I've gotten 1 right and 2 wrong, which I'll take. Usually if I can even get a quarter of those upset of the weeks wrong or right, then I'll take that, because you're literally trying to guess one that is going to be a major upset. So I'm happy with that. So the video you'll watch after this, I'm hoping to upload it the very next day here, will be predictions for week 10, and hopefully I can keep it rolling, and maybe my percentage of right answers or right guesses will be a little better than 44 and 27 going down the stretch, now that we know the team's a little bit better. But speaking of knowing the team's better, let's kind of go over so far what it's looking like. We'll start off with the playoff picture, and just kind of go over real quick the teams. But then as far as the actual breakdowns, I'll go into the different divisions. Well, actually, no. Let's do it this way. Let's go through from 1 to 16 every single team that's currently sitting at whatever place they are in the playoff picture, and we'll start from the bottom, work our way all the way up to the top. I think that's a pretty good way of doing it. So let's start off with the AFC. So we're going to start off things with the Houston Texans, and these teams on the bottom are going to be pretty predictable. There's going to be a lot of teams on the top that we didn't necessarily expect to be there, but these teams on the bottom, besides a couple, are not very surprising. The Houston Texans are one of them. You know, we always thought that this team would be the team that would be kind of tanking for their next future quarterback. I expect this team to get C.J. Stroud, or maybe Young, but we'll have to see what happens there. But this team definitely is tanking. There's a lot of stuff going on in the organization still. It seems like shedding away from Deshaun Watson has, kind of taken the spotlight away from them, but obviously there's still a lot of stuff to investigate there and just a lot of mistakes and problems still within that organization besides just them being a bad football team. But on the football side of things, they just don't have enough good players. Their defense put up a heck of a fight against the Eagles, but besides that, they've really been struggling. And they just don't have a lot going for them. Davis Mills he kind of started off like, okay, maybe he can lead this team a little bit. He tied the Colts, but at the time the Colts, people were thinking maybe they'd be a contender. They sure turned out not to be, and that we're going to talk about them soon. But yeah, Mills looked good at first, and he's just not been playing super well. He's not been the biggest liability on this team, but he's not been great either. So Houston Texans sitting firmly at 16. And then we got the Pittsburgh Steelers. They started things off with Mitchell Trubisky, and then they moved forward with Kenny Pickett after they realized they're not making the playoffs with either most likely, so might as well go with the young guy. And Pickett has lived up to the Pickett name, throwing a lot of interceptions, and he hasn't been getting a lot of help. And then they traded away Chase Claypool, but they're another team that I would think about maybe going for another quarterback, maybe battling things out with Pickett. But I would expect them to go another year with him. Maybe they'd pick up a later round quarterback, or maybe they just think maybe he's not the guy and go for a guy in the first round. We'll see. But definitely need some good draft picks with how badly they've been playing. And their sun is set, and I expect Mike Tomlin to be gone pretty soon, whether it's by his own decision or the team's decision. But then we move on to 14, and this is a team that was actually pretty surprising, the Las Vegas Raiders. This is a team that, people were talking about the stacked AFC West. They had just gotten Devontae Adams, and it was looking like this team was going to be right up there with them. They just barely lost to the Chargers, and we were thinking, okay, they can still contend for the wild card spot. And we were thinking, man, this division could have all three wild card teams and the division winner all in the playoffs. But to no avail. Derek Carr has not been leading this team well enough. Devontae Adams has been doing his part and doing as well as he possibly can do. But Derek Carr has not been playing his best football, and this defense just has every possible hole in it. They've had so many games throughout the season where they were leading by a decent margin, and just their defense wasn't good enough, so you can't win games that way. The Jaguars, we're seeing the growth of this team, and it's exciting to see that this team could potentially be more in the future. Trevor Lawrence has actually been pretty productive the last few weeks, and the team has not scored under 20 in the last 4 weeks. Of course, they haven't scored over 27 in that point at that stage either. But the offense has not been as big of an issue this year as it was in years past. This is a team that's definitely on the up, and they could definitely be the Jets of this year, next year, if they keep this up and get some good guys in the offseason. The Denver Broncos is far and away the biggest surprise here on the lower ranking teams. Man, what's going on? Russell Wilson, is looking more and more like you see the tapes of things that went wrong with Seattle. And before everyone's thinking, oh man, this and that, and Pete Carroll isn't giving, let Russ cook. They're not letting Russell Wilson do his thing. But we're watching Russell Wilson do his thing, and it's not pretty. So this Broncos team needs to figure out what they are going to be in the future. Their defense still is really good, but their offense, it's just the same thing with Russell Wilson as it was with Drew Lock, and that's just unacceptable for either side. Now they just locked Russell Wilson into that big deal, so embarrassing, and we'll have to see what happens the rest of the way, but it's not looking good for the Broncos and their future. Jerry Jeudy has been looking good, but unless Russell Wilson can keep going or they can dump off his contract, this team's going to be stuck in mediocrity for a while now. The Browns, 3-5, and this has been a really streaky team. Brissett has done just enough to win a few times. Nick Chubb is basically this entire team's identity. and their defense hasn't been awful. But the whole question now is, this team's now 3-5, and they get Deshaun Watson back week 11. Will this team win enough without him, where if he does come in and play really well, they can still make a playoff push? And then the adverse of that is also, along with all that, how good is Deshaun Watson really going to be after basically not playing for 2 years? Obviously, with all the stuff going on, I hope they don't make the playoffs, and I hope Deshaun Watson comes back and just plays horribly, but that's my own personal opinion. We'll see what happens. Indianapolis Colts at 3-5-1. And this is a team, again, that, they were looking like they could potentially be a playoff team to start off the season if Matt Ryan could, play like he'd been playing the last few years, or if he was going to have that big veteran drop-off, and it's looking like he is. And it's evidenced by the Colts bringing in Ettinger, with Matt Ryan just being very mediocre, and the Colts team still thinking they have some left in the tank and potential to still try and fight for a playoff spot, thinking if we bring in our rookie, let's just see how he does. But we're going to have to see how he does the rest of the way. Jonathan Taylor, while he's not playing horribly, he's definitely not playing up to the caliber that he was expected to in the way he played last year by any means. So he's going to have to keep picking it up and carrying this team the way that Chubb's been carrying the Browns if the Colts are going to have any chance of getting their way back into this playoff picture. So that's kind of the breaking point there between the AFC teams that are battling for it and the teams that are, looking like they're almost out of contention already. Because now we got the top 9 who are still battling for the playoff spots. I'm not saying that the 3-5 teams can't get to that point, but these are the teams that are looking legitimately like they can get there at this point. The number 9 is the Bengals, 5-4, and this is a big muddled mess of teams battling for the 7th seed here. The Bengals are going back and forth here. It seems like one week, just like last week, they can score 42 points and just crush the opposing team, and then another week they can barely score 14 points, and they get blown out by a team that they should beat. So this team needs to break that inconsistency. Obviously, Jamar Chase is a big factor in him being gone. Can the Bengals, climb out of the rut that they could easily get in? If they can't handle Chase being out. Boyd's really stepped up in his absence the last couple games. Joe Mixon is playing phenomenally. So if they can continue to play well until Chase gets back, they have a chance, but it all comes down to how consistently they can play well. The Patriots at 8, and they are 5-4 also, one game out, which is surprising because initially I was thinking the Patriots, like this was they were on their last leg, they're going to end up winning 6 games here, and it's going to officially spell the end of Belichick's reign. But now all of a sudden the Patriots above 500 in legitimate playoff contention, and a team to be taken seriously. The Vikings are going to have to play in a few weeks on Thanksgiving. Bill Belichick is just a wizard. He can Mac Jones is not the best quarterback in the world, but he's taking Mac Jones, he's utilizing him, and he really knows how to use players in the way that they're meant to be used, and he understands what players can and can't do, and he just uses those things to his utmost advantage. He's just a wizard in every shape or form. Now going on to the Chargers, they're at 7. They currently have that 7th spot. And they're another team that's definitely shown flashes. Herbert obviously being a tremendous quarterback, but their injuries are just continuing to gash them. And if there is any reason why I would think the Patriots could potentially overtake the Chargers for this spot, or even the Bengals, it would be because of those injuries. It's just really hard to maintain a team that can play to the level of these other teams when you're just missing so many guys. They still have the really important guys on their defense, including Khalil Mack, and Herbert's continuing to play like Herbert, but their offense is missing weapons. Their offensive line is in shambles right now, and their secondary is just being picked off one by injury. So that's the main concern with them right now. But they can still continue to play well and potentially get a playoff spot here. Miami Dolphins are 6-3, and I think they would be right there. They are already right there with the Bills. But the way the Bills have been playing the last couple weeks, if Tua hadn't gotten hurt those couple of games, they could easily be leading the AFC East right now. They have so many things working in their favor. Tyreek Hill has just been the MVP of the league on the wide receiver side so far this year. He is leading this team when Tua can't, but Tua has also been leading them incredibly well. They don't need much of a running game. It's going to be interesting to see how well they can continue to go without a super prolific running game like they've had. Jalen Waddle's been kind of coming into his own, and this team could easily bump up to 5 or potentially even make some noise for trying to capture the AFC East from the Bills, depending on how long this Josh Allen injury could potentially last. Now, in the 5th seed, the best wildcard team in the AFC right now is the New York Jets, 6-3 and coming off of a huge win from the Buffalo Bills. This is a team that, I mean, it's just like there's so many ways you could feel like, okay, they shouldn't be at this point. They haven't been playing well enough, but then they get it done. It's a lot like the Vikings, honestly, where but it's not like the Vikings. I shouldn't say that, because the Vikings have a lot of talent and they back it up with a lot of talent, and they honestly have not been playing to their potential. Whereas the Jets, you didn't think they had that potential because they don't have a lot of flashy big name players, but they continue to rise above and break the standard of how people think they should be playing. So will they continue this? This is one of the teams that you have to very closely watch going down the stretch, because these are now the games where, at the beginning of the season you have a lot less pressure on you. Teams aren't necessarily looking at you as a threat yet. But now 6-3, halfway through the season, potentially a threat to the Bills in the AFC East. People or teams and the entire league are going to be looking at you a lot closer, and teams are going to be giving you their absolute best every single week. So can the Jets handle that pressure? Can Zach Wilson handle that pressure? We're going to have to see, but Sauce has been balling out, and he's going to have to continue balling out if this team's going to keep playing well. The Tennessee Titans are one of those teams. They're at 4 right now, currently leading the absolutely awful AFC South like they have been the last few years, the easiest division in the entire league. And the Titans are weird because it seems like there's always that team that wins in really boring ways, and you kind of just forget about them, and not a lot of teams are talking about them. I heard on First Take, because I was listening to First Take today, I heard the Titans come up as a potential team that could, how much noise will they make in the playoffs? And I realized I haven't heard any national media cover them to any degree this season. Like, I almost forgot that they were a team for a while, because they got smacked by the Bills, and it kind of sent them into irrelevancy for a while. But they have been still winning games. They've won a lot of their last few. And Derrick Henry continues to be Derrick Henry. Don't count this team out ever. The only thing is, are they able to stand out against a team like the Bills? It's a lot like the Vikings here, where the Vikings got destroyed against the Eagles, and we're going to talk about that in the NFC section of this. But they got smacked by the only really good team they've played so far this season. But they've been able to get it done against worse teams, and seems like they're kind of on the rise after losing their first 2 games. They've now went 5-1, but how much is that them playing bad teams, and how much is that like an ability to rise above? And obviously they've been through a lot of hardship the last couple years, but we're going to have to see how good they actually are once they play another legitimate contender. Because they lost to the Chiefs last week, so we'll see what happens there. Baltimore Ravens in the 3 seed currently, with the Bengals on their backs a little bit, breathing down their neck, I should say. And this is another team. They have these weeks where Lamar Jackson plays super well, and sometimes even without Lamar Jackson playing well, they just manage to win in a lot of different ways. Mark Andrews has been playing phenomenally. And in other weeks, they just have real stinkers of games. They've lost to the Giants, who, you have no idea how good they are. And this is the point where these teams are either going to break away or you're going to see their true colors. I still believe that the Ravens can be a real threat to the AFC in these playoffs, but I'm going to have to see how well they respond now against another really good team. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills are the two teams that are above everyone else. They're the clear standalone favorites to potentially be in the Super Bowl. On the Chiefs side, obviously Patrick Mahomes, you don't need to say very much about him at this point anymore, but he continues to lead the team. He continues to do things that seem physically impossible. And this team, while they've shown a couple signs of weakness this season, their passing attack still continues to be. It doesn't matter who they plug in, they just are so good every single week. And the same thing goes for the Bills. The only thing with the Bills is that concern now with Josh Allen. But besides that, the Buffalo Bills are getting it done in every single conceivable way. A very embarrassing loss to the Jets last week, but you can't base an entire season off of one rough loss to a team that's actually looking really good right now. And I legitimately still think the Bills are the favorite to win the AFC over the Chiefs. That is considering the fact that Josh Allen is potentially injured past this week. They could be without him against the Vikings, but we're going to have to see how that goes. For now, he'll play, but he wasn't a participant in practice as of today, which, as I'm recording this, is Thursday. We'll see what happens. It's potentially the Chiefs could easily rise above them if he doesn't play for a couple games, but we'll have to see. But yeah, Bills and Chiefs are far and away still the best two teams in this AFC. Let's do the NFC now, and we start with the Panthers, who are actually lower than the Lions here at 2-7. And this is a team. They're on their rebuild path. They fired Matt Rule. Baker Mayfield, it was their last ditch effort to see if they could have their core guys salvaged, but no. They trade away DJ Moore. They trade away Robbie Anderson, and they have nothing really left. Obviously, trade away Christian McCaffrey too, their main three best players at this point. And Baker Mayfield literally sent down to be the backup QB now. They have an XFL quarterback over him. So just embarrassing times for the Panthers. Sorry to my friend Ben, who is a big Panthers fan. But it's rebuild time for the Panthers. A lot of things have gone wrong this season, and it's looking like they're going to just try for one of the top quarterbacks in the draft, which I wouldn't blame them for. They need a good quarterback, and they need to start rebuilding this team. The Detroit Lions is a really, really unfortunate story so far this season. They played a couple of good games at the beginning of the season, win their first game of the season, and it's looking like, man, like no one's expecting them to be a playoff team by any means, but they can go 6-10, maybe even, I'm forgetting how the 17 game thing even works now. 6-11. If they can go 6-11, or even 7-9, or 7-10, sorry. It's still messing with me, the new game added, but if they can go 6-9, 7-10, it just would be a great push forward for these Lions, and it can show that they have so much potential left in the future. But then, a lot of questionable decisions in the first few games by Dan Campbell, especially against the Vikings. And this defense has just been atrocious. I mean, this is the worst defense I've seen in a long time by any team. And it's the reason why they're 2-6. And it sucks because I still think Dan Campbell is a great coach. He's great at inspiring his players. I think that after watching Hard Knocks, I really like his style of leadership. But leadership and coaching are not exactly mutually exclusive. In order to be a good coach, you have to be a good leader, and you have to really know the playbook. You have to be a great game manager and know how to call plays. And I think he's a great leader, but I just don't know about the other things. And we're going to have to see. I hope he doesn't get fired this year. I hope they let him go one more year and just see how he does with the more experience. But it's just not working out once again for the Lions, the most unfortunate franchise in the history of any sporting franchise I've seen. Chicago Bears, you gotta love the NFC North. We have, out of the bottom 5 in this list, all 3 of the other teams in the NFC North are on these bottom 5. So you gotta love the NFC North. But yeah, the Chicago Bears are now looking kind of like they're on the rise. Justin Fields all of a sudden woke up and decided he's going to be a really good quarterback the last few weeks. And I'm not saying, I think we should kind of pump the brakes on this because who knows how long it's actually going to last. But Fields has been playing really well. And is this the Fields that the Bears thought they were getting when they drafted him? Or is this just a fluke few weeks? Where he's been going up against teams that just aren't expecting him to play well, and he's just torching them. But we're going to have to see the rest of the way. If the Bears can play well with Fields, and Fields can start getting better and better and better, and they win 6 or 7 games this season, then maybe it's not full blow-up time. And they already got rid of a couple pieces on defense, but they have enough pieces around them where if Fields looks like he's going to be good, they can potentially try and build a team for next year, but we're going to have to see what happens there. The Arizona Cardinals have been a mystery for me this year. Obviously, they had a couple big injuries to start off the season, and they were missing DeAndre Hopkins. But now they've been still losing a couple games here with DeAndre Hopkins. Kyler Murray has not been looking like he did last year when the Cardinals started off their season so well. Ever since the Cardinals kind of tanked and lost a bunch of games at the end of last season and then got killed in the wild card game. Ever since that happened, they've just been off. And I think that Kingsbury is going to be fired very soon. It's only a matter of time. And this Cardinals team, man, they have so much potential, had so much potential going into the season. And just like that, they're 3-6. Still some time to salvage the season, but not a lot of time left. Speaking of running out of time, both this season and just in their dynasty in general, although can you really call it a dynasty when you had 30-plus years, 2 straight Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and you won 2 Super Bowls out of it? I don't think I could call that a dynasty. Of course, I'm talking about the Green Bay Packers, 3-6. Happy about that. Aaron Rodgers, it's beautiful. It's beautiful what's going on with the Packers right now because Aaron Rodgers, you hear him talking about, oh man, yeah, wide receivers got to hold themselves accountable. This team could be so much better. And he didn't say that exactly, but he definitely was alluding to the wide receivers dropping passes. The wide receivers are now firing back saying, oh man, Rodgers has been playing not like himself either. And, I don't like all the blame being put on us. And the beautiful part of it is it's all of them. It's all of them. There's no easy fix. The wide receivers suck. They're dropping passes. And Aaron Rodgers has been playing the worst football he's played in his entire career, and it's only going to go down from here. And the beauty of it is they're not even trying to fix it. They're just yelling at each other, claiming that the other person or other side of the ball or other position is to blame. And that's how you just drive a team that already has a bad culture into the ground, and everything's going to blow up in this offseason. I don't think Matt LaFleur will be fired because of how well he coached, or how well he coached, basically how many games they won last season, because he's not necessarily been that great of a coach. They just had Devontae Adams last year. But I expect a full blow-up of the team. I expect Aaron Rodgers to retire. If not, he'll go somewhere else. There's no way he's staying with this team anymore. So it's just beautiful. Two Hall of Fame quarterbacks over 30-plus years, and you've got a Super Bowl from each. Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, 2 of the best quarterbacks in NFL history, back-to-back, and you don't do nearly as much as you should have with both of them, so you just love that. And now the New Orleans Saints, man, it is a great year to be a Vikings fan. The Saints now are 3-6. They're looking real bad. And it doesn't matter what quarterback they have in there. They just don't have enough. Michael Thomas continues to be made of glass because now he is out for the season again. And they just didn't have enough pieces this year. Their defense was supposed to be the main marquee part of their team, and they're just not playing well enough. And they're unfortunately in a division where the Buccaneers are 4-5, so only like a solid win and a half ahead of them, and they're leading the division. So the Saints still have a shot at the division at 3-6 as it stands right now, but I don't expect them to get there. I think the Buccaneers will start playing at least a little bit better, enough to get over the hump, although the Falcons are also breathing down their necks, and we're about to talk about them, but the Saints are not looking good either. Going into the 10 seed, a big surprise, Los Angeles Rams. So I talked about at the beginning of the season how I expected the Bengals to have a Super Bowl hangover. I didn't expect the Rams to have a Super Bowl hangover because I thought, all the veteran guys on that team would band together and prevent, a big hangover like that from happening. Usually it's more the inexperienced teams that go to the Super Bowl and have that hangover, but it's happening with the Rams. The offensive line can't block. Matthew Stafford is not the quarterback he was playing like last year. Still think they can turn it around, but it's getting to crunch time. Last season they did kind of get off to they were pretty slow in the middle of the season. They had the winning streak, and then they kind of had a mix of communication as they were getting new guys in, but then they picked it up at the beginning or at the end of the season. This year they're running out of time to figure that out, and now they're losing their division. I mean, they're 3 games out of the division with the Seahawks, and they have a lot of things they have to figure out very, very quickly. Obviously still have some prolific guys on defense like Aaron Donald, but this offense just is shockingly bad so far. The Washington Commanders, Taylor Heineke continues to be that quarterback that you just really like to root for, even though this team has had its struggles. I think that they're just a few pieces away. Like, Taylor Heineke isn't that bad of a quarterback. I think he's just thrust into a situation too quickly. The Commanders are making way too many mistakes. The Vikings won that game in part because we're just a very clutch team, and we've been playing very clutch this season, but also the fact that the Commanders made a lot of key mistakes. Specifically, they had a big opportunity where they could tie up the game at the end of the game, but whatever, I can't remember who it was, but when they jumped over the center and gave us a full new 3 downs to work with, that was a big mistake. The Commanders can be a really good team in the future, but they have a few things they have to clean up, some personnel they have to change around, and it's just really tough to play for this team when there's so much other bad publicity going around within the organization. So hopefully this whole thing gets blown up. There's a new change in leadership throughout the board, and Snyder's gone, and the Commanders can start off from scratch officially. And then the Falcons at 8, 4-5 can easily still take the NFC South here, and I think that if they were more consistent and if they didn't continue to be the Falcons that are constantly known for choking leads, their defense needs to play a lot better. Cordell Patterson is their entire team right now, and thankfully he's back both for them and for my fantasy team. But another inconsistent team that definitely can still break out and make it as the division winner in the NFC South, but because the South division is so bad, they have to do that in order to make the playoffs. New York Giants, or excuse me, I'm skipping over the 49ers at the 7 seed currently, 4-4, and this is a team that it's tough to put an identity on quite yet. They just got Christian McCaffrey. They're improving their team. They're coming back from some injuries, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if this team could potentially make a run to try and beat out the Seahawks for this division still by the end of the season. I think they're a lot better than their record says they are. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be the guy that holds this team up, and that's why I don't expect them to have a lot of postseason success this year, because their running game was dominant last year. It's still good this year, but it's not as dominant as it was last year, and they just don't have the same spark so far. But we're going to have to see what happens. I do think they can continue to build from the McCaffrey trade and keep getting better as a team. They could potentially make some noise, but they're not. I don't think they're as good as they were last year. The New York Giants are 6-2, sitting at the 6th seed, and these 5 and 6 seeds are better than either of the division winners beyond the Vikings, the Seahawks, and the Buccaneers. The Giants, they've just been finding ways to win once again. You can, like a lot of these teams, you can say a lot about the teams they've played, but they did beat the Ravens. They beat the Titans. They are a legitimate team, and Daniel Jones has been playing a lot better recently. I think Brian Dable, easy favorite right now for Coach of the Year in my opinion. A couple other guys like Kevin O'Connell in that mix too. But Dable's ability to channel what Daniel Jones can do and understanding what he can't do is the reason why he's been playing so much better than he has in years past. His running ability is definitely a big X factor for this team. And if their defense can continue to hold on here, they could continue to be something special. I don't think they're as good as the other teams in the NFC East, but we're going to have to see. Maybe they'll play well against the Vikings. We're going to have to see what happens. Dallas Cowboys is, I think, the second most dangerous team in the league right now, or in the NFC right now, sitting at 6-2 with Dak back, and this defense is another level. Micah Parsons is playing like defensive player of the year type play at the linebacker position, and he's flying around basically everywhere. The pass rush is a nightmare. I'm really concerned about the pass rush against our poor Vikings offensive line when they play us in a couple weeks. This is a team. I like the Cowboys being in this position because I do think the Cowboys are a serious threat to overtake the Eagles. So I'm hoping that in some playoff scenario the Cowboys can play the Eagles and potentially upset them so that if the Vikings do, by some miracle, make the NFC Championship, then they'll have to play us at home. We'll see what happens, but that's my hope. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 4-5 in the 4th seed, currently winning the absolutely awful NFC South this year. Tom Brady is slow. He's not the reason why necessarily this team is 4-5, but like I've been saying, he needs more help around him. He's not going to be able to carry a team like he's done in the past, and it's catching up to him. His age isn't keeping him from playing good football, but it's keeping him from playing dominant enough football where the mistakes that we see around him aren't glaring. He in the past he was able to kind of hide away those issues with his teams and make it work, and it's not going to work this year. It's looking very clear like it's not going to work this year unless other players can work with him and this team can rally around him as opposed to him being the one-man show. 3rd seed is the Seattle Seahawks, the biggest surprise this year so far. I thought the Seahawks would maybe win 4 or 5 games. All of a sudden, their defense isn't playing well, but Geno Smith is playing fantastically, and they deserve this 3 seed right now, currently leading the NFC West by about a game and a half, or 2 games actually, over the 49ers. And this is another team where you're just kind of like, okay, wait for it. You kind of are waiting for them to collapse, but it hasn't happened yet, so we're going to see how it happens, or if it will happen at all. But I'm concerned about the Seahawks in the playoffs because they're so inexperienced with these players. Geno Smith, can he handle that big moment? We'll have to see. But right now, 6-3 looking good. Minnesota Vikings, 7-1, and I did a full breakdown of this team. I'm just going to skip it because I just talked about them in the bye. So talking about the Eagles, currently at 8-0, and the big thing is, who did they play besides the Vikings that you can really say are even a legitimate potential playoff team? It really isn't anyone, but this is this is a season where a lot of teams are either middle of the road or near the bottom. There aren't a lot of teams that are standalone, like really good teams. And then even the rest of the season, Eagles at 8-0 haven't lost yet. There's maybe the Titans and maybe the 2 games against the Giants, and obviously the game at Dallas. Those are the 4 games that I think they even have a chance of losing this season. So I think they should be a pretty clear favorite now to make it to the Super Bowl. They're definitely going to get that 1st seed unless the Vikings play out of their minds the rest of this stretch. But the Eagles are the real deal. Jalen Hurts tearing it up. He's an MVP favorite. And this Eagles team is very special. They're clear rival to the Bills and Chiefs so far. Those are really the top 3 teams. So, looking at this NFC and AFC, let me know your thoughts. Some surprise teams, some teams that we knew where they'd be. I didn't think the Eagles would be that good. We knew the Bills and Chiefs would be that good, so we'll see. It's going to be really exciting to see what happens down the stretch. But thanks so much for watching this one, and I'll see you on the flip side.